Russian military instructors have arrived in Niger with an air defense system and other equipment as part of the West African nation's deepening security ties with Moscow. Russian military trainers arrived in the country aboard a plane equipped with military supplies on night of the 18th of April. 2 Russian trainers were filmed in front of the plane wearing military uniforms, caps, and face coverings. The arrival of a Russian air defense system can be viewed as part of the junta's effort to reclaim sovereignty, this time over its airspace, and force the US and Russia to cooperate with each other in Niger. But there may be any other reason for junta to maintain relations with both countries. But Russia's presence seems to be stronger, as Russia indirectly has expelled French forces from 7 countries out of 14 French colonies. What do you think, that will Russia colonize Africa, or it wants to strengthen Africa in geopolitical order? Is Russia exploiting Africa's natural resources and helping Iran in the nuclear deal? And most importantly, what did Putin say about African people? Let's uncover all these questions in the video, so be with us until the end. Niger's military government agreed in January to step up security cooperation with Russia after expelling French forces that were helping fight jihadist rebellions in several Sahel nations. African Corps have seen as the successor of Russia's Wagner mercenary group in Africa, confirmed it had arrived in Niger. Russia will help install an air defense system to ensure complete control of Africa's airspace. One instructor was quoted as saying that, "We are here to train the Niger army and help it use the equipment that has just arrived." The equipment is for different military specialties. The head of Niger's military government, General Abdurrahmane Tiani, spoke by telephone with Russian President Vladimir Putin on March 26th. The 2 leaders discussed security cooperation as well as global strategic cooperation against current threats. Niger, one of the world's poorest countries, had been a frontline partner of the West in battling jihadists in the Sahel, but has turned to Russia since the elected president was ousted last July. Niger has also joined neighbors Mali and Burkina Faso, both countries also ruled by military leaders after coups, to create a joint force to battle long-running jihadist insurgencies. The junta kicked out forces from former colonial power France, whose 1,500 troops had left Niger by the end of last year. The military also announced it was breaking off a 2012 agreement with the United States, which has built a desert drone base at a cost of $100 million in northern Niger and has some 1,000 troops in the country. For your information, we've already covered this topic in detail in one of our previous videos, so it's highly recommended that you watch that video in detail after this ends. Link is also mentioned in the description. However, the arrival of Russian forces makes it complicated for the US forces, along with diplomatic and civilian personnel, to remain in the country and throws into doubt the future of joint Niger-US counterinsurgency operations. Until recently, Washington considered Niger a key partner and ally in a region swept by coups in recent years, investing millions of dollars in an airbase in a desert area that served as the heart of American counterinsurgency operations in the sub-Saharan region known as the Sahel. The US also invested heavily in training Niger's forces to beat back insurgencies by militants linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State, which ravaged the country and its neighbors. But last summer, some of those elite US-trained forces took part in a coup that ousted the elected president. As recently as December, some 600 US troops and hundreds more contractors were stationed in Niger, tasked with flying manned and unmanned surveillance operations and supporting local forces against jihadist groups. Since then, relations between Niger's new leaders and Washington have quickly deteriorated. Following the visit last month of a US delegation led by the top US envoy to Africa, Molly Fee, the junta announced on state television that flights from the US-built airbase were illegal and that it no longer recognized the American military presence in the country. The junta criticized the US for warning Niger against cooperating with Russia and Iran, saying it was trying to force the African country to choose between partners. Before we proceed further, discussing how Wagner is trying to secure natural resources and what Putin has said about African people, I'd like to hear from you. Are you finding this video informative? Feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the comment section below. And if you're finding it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support means a lot to us and helps us reach a wider audience and the content that you'll love. Let's continue this journey together. Russia is offering governments in Africa a regime survival package in exchange for access to strategically important natural resources. Internal Russian government documents, seen by the BBC, also detail how it is working to change mining laws in West Africa, with the ambition of dislodging Western companies from an area of strategic importance. This is the Russian state coming out of the shadows in its Africa policy. But for the military juntas running these countries, Russia's military presence has obvious benefits. Initially, these juntas were transitional leaders. They were supposed to organize elections and bring about a return to democratic institutions. But now Russian paramilitaries are brought in to protect the military junta, allowing them to stay as long as they want. The junta ordered the French forces to leave, and Mali is now largely dependent on Wagner Group for its internal security, a change that is having an immediate impact on ordinary Malians. What the Russians have provided is a strike force, with helicopters with advanced capabilities and a lot of firepower. They are using pretty traditional Soviet anti-partisan methods, which were executed. There have been multiple claims that Wagner forces carried out human rights abuses on the African continent, as well as in Ukraine and Syria. One of the well-documented incidents took place in the central Malian town of Moura. According to a UN report, at least 500 people are believed to have been summarily executed by Malian troops and armed white men, who eyewitnesses described as speaking an unknown language. Mali, like many African nations, is rich in natural resources from timber and gold to uranium and lithium. Some are simply valuable, while others have strategic importance as well. According to Dr. Watling, Wagner was operating in a well-established tradition. In every country in which it operates, Wagner was reported to have secured valuable natural resources, using these to not only cover costs, but also extract significant revenue. Russia has extracted $2.5 billion worth of gold from Africa in the past 2 years, which is likely to have helped fund its war in Ukraine. This month, Russian fighters, formerly Wagner mercenaries, took control of Mali's Intahaka gold mine, close to the border with Burkina Faso. The artisanal mine had been disputed for many years by various armed groups active in the region. But there is something else, with potential geopolitical significance. Africans are now observing the Russians attempting to strategically displace Western control of access to critical minerals and resources. In Mali, the mining code was recently rewritten to give the junta greater control over natural resources. According to Dr. Watling, lithium and gold mines are clearly important. There is possibly an even greater strategic headache around the corner. In Niger, the Russians are endeavoring to gain a similar set of concessions that would strip French access to the uranium mines in the country. The report details internal Russian memos focused on trying to achieve in Niger what was done in Mali. If Russia managed to gain control of West Africa's uranium mines, Europe could be left exposed once again to what has often been called Russian energy blackmail. France is more dependent on nuclear power than any other country in the world, with 56 reactors producing almost 2/3 of the country's energy. About 1/5 of its uranium is imported from Niger. There have previously been complaints about the terms of trade, with suggestions that the former colonial power exploits nations like Niger. The narrative that Russia is pushing is that Western states remain fundamentally colonial in their attitude. Despite the change in military alliances, Niger continues to face severe security threats. The country is grappling with violence from Islamic State militants, as well as ongoing incursions by Boko Haram along its border with Nigeria. The Nigerian Defense Ministry reported a deadly incident where an army patrol vehicle struck a landmine in the Tillaberi region near the Mali border, resulting in the deaths of at least 6 soldiers and additional injuries. Such incidents underline the ongoing volatile security situation in Niger, which the junta has cited as a justification for the coup and the subsequent shift in its international military alliances. As this situation develops, the international community remains watchful of the implications of Russia's increasing influence in Niger and the broader Sahel region, amid concerns over the stability and democratic governance in these areas. President Vladimir Putin reaffirmed Russia's dedication to fostering also a robust healthcare partnership with African nations, recognizing their vulnerability to emerging infectious diseases. Last November, Russian virologists and military personnel deployed a mobile laboratory in Burkina Faso to assist in screening for dengue fever during an epidemic that claimed hundreds of lives in 2023. Putin emphasized the urgent need to enhance medical, scientific, and technological capabilities across Africa to combat infections effectively. The ongoing conference in Kampala is part of the collaborative efforts proposed at the Second Russia-Africa Summit, aiming to facilitate knowledge sharing among medical professionals, epidemiologists, and microbiologists from 20 countries. Putin said, "I am confident that this collective effort will yield tangible results and contribute to safeguarding the health of Africa's population." What do you think? Is Russia really trying to help African nations, or it just wants to establish colonies like France did in the past? Or is it a strategic move by Russia to expel US and French forces out of the continent? It may be possible that Russia is trying to do the both things simultaneously, means one arrow, two sparrow. First is taking over African resources. Second, to decline the presence of Western forces by giving power to junta and establishing its own Wagner military power. Let us know your opinions in the comment section, and don't forget to share the video and like and click on the subscribe button as well for remaining updated of the current trends in this fast-paced modern world. And don't forget to watch our previous video on Niger and US relations, that how Niger cut ties with US. Until next video, stay tuned.